about the tuna admitting he had issues with Terrell Owens while coaching the Cowboys, but believes that despite his issues with T.O., Owens should make the Hall. We talked about that term railroaded earlier, Max.
Yeah.
Does this prove T.O. was railroaded?
Yes. Dan Fouts testified to that fact, basically said, yeah, we railroaded him. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame player who's not getting into the Hall of Fame. There are tough calls in the Hall of Fame. I wouldn't have put TD in. I'm happy he got in. I'm happy for him. His prime was certainly Hall of Fame caliber, tragically cut short by injury. I think there are borderline cases like that where I would fall on the other side. But this wasn't a hard one. This is an easy one. T.O. was a distraction. I need more specifics. Can I have more details? How was he a distraction? And by the way, considering his level of play, where he always gave you a better chance to win than anyone else in the era at his position, except maybe Randy Moss, I really need to know those details. Best player in the Super Bowl on either team on one leg. He was called selfish going into that game for wanting to help his team on one leg. Babe Ruth was a distraction. Joe Namath was a distraction. LT was a distraction. They're all in the Hall of Fame. You know why? In their various Hall of Fames. Because they were Hall of Fame players. That's why. They're Hall of Fame players. They go into the Hall of Fame. For T.O.'s distractions, the ones that he supposedly created, and I'm willing to accept the idea that he was less than ideal in the locker room for coaches at times and teammates. Do you know how severe they would have to be to keep that level of production and talent for that long a time out of the Hall of Fame? I'm sorry. It's not like he was out committing crimes and destroying teams from within. Eagles got to the Super Bowl where he balled out, as I mentioned. He's obviously a Hall of Famer getting railroaded. Parcells is admitting it, and so did Fouts, by the way.
Not railroaded. By no definition of the word railroad has T.O. been railroaded out of the Hall of Fame. But let's just focus on that. There seems to be some memo that goes around that I don't get, that T.O.'s in the Hall of Fame and everybody has to stand with Charles Oakley and a few others. I don't understand how these things are so obvious to everyone. Let me say, I agree. If I'm sitting on that panel, I vote sooner or later that T.O. goes into the Hall of Fame because it's a balancing act. But for you to say railroad pretends, except for your one little caveat about him being a divisive teammate towards the end of your soliloquy, to pretend that doesn't exist, that offsets his numbers. It doesn't offset to the point that he should be out of the Hall of Fame, but it certainly means it's a hard call. Max, it certainly means it's a hard call. And it's reflected in Bill Parcells' words.
He would have to have bodies buried for it to be a hard call.
This is a Hall of Fame coach. This is a Hall of Fame coach giving you how hard a call it is. He is telling you this guy was not good in the locker room, not just on the locker room, but on the sideline, not just on the sideline, but on the field. When a 12-yard out was called and he ran it for 9 yards, Parcells called him unreliable. Take Parcells, take Dan Fouts, take Donovan McNabb, take Tony Romo, take Jason Witten, take Jeff Garcia. All of these men played with him except for Fouts. All of these people played with him.
And what's Parcells' opinion, Will?
That he should go in. Max, I'm not saying you're wrong on that point. I am saying you're wrong on the obviousness of it. And that seems to be where everyone is. This is so obvious. This is such a travesty of justice. It's not. T.O. will get in. It'll probably be in a year or two.
How many wideouts in his era? How many players who played the position in his era gave you a better chance to win than T.O.? Maybe Randy Moss. Can you name another?
That's a great opinion. It might be one that I agree with, but I'm going to defer to these people that played with
that also he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, but they say that he has serious negatives that make this a difficult decision.
Will Kane, you sound like a flaming hypocrite.
Okay.
How? Just a segment earlier, you talked about justice.
This is going to be interesting.
You talked about justice. You constantly come on this show on a weekly basis and you talk about fairness and you talk about justice. I am saying to you, there is no denying the level of production that T.O. has put forth. You are looking on the outside and you're saying you had these players and you read up and you realize that these coaches, these players have spoken up against T.O. Well, Donovan McNabb played with T.O., called T.O. a headache and a distraction at times, et cetera, et cetera. He concedes. T.O.'s a Hall of Famer. Bill Parcells, a Hall of Fame coach, recognized that, he was problematic at times. Still said he's a Hall of Famer. I covered T.O. in Philadelphia. The Brian Dawkins of the world and Jeremiah Trotters of the world and so many Hugh Douglases of the world who got into a fist fight with T.O. for crying out loud and others. These are people who were in the locker room and had to concede. He wasn't as bad of a teammate as people tried to project him to be, not to mention the fact that they concede. He's a Hall of Famer. And knowing that, looking at the numbers that go along with it, That's where we reach the point that it's obvious, because everything else is speculative.
No.
Well, yes, it is.
Would you call Bill Parcells' statement speculative?
No. What I'm saying to you is that Bill Parcells and Donovan McNabb's opinion, and the fact that they're willing to reach the conclusion that he's a Hall of Famer. You have others who didn't play with T.O., who would say that he's not, because of the very things that they acknowledge while conceding he's a Hall of Famer, and they're the ones who played with him.
The ones who are in best position to make that call are conceding it.
What would you call? Let me just ask you this. What would you call Bill Parcells' statement? Was that a ringing endorsement?
Yes.
Oh, get out of here.
Let me explain why. Because despite the adversity, he's conceding something he would not be inclined to concede.
But he's not saying it's a no-brainer, and that's what you're arguing, that this is not a no-brainer decision.
No. A concession is not a ringing endorsement.
Let me tell you
why. It is a reluctant conclusion you've reached.
Let me tell you why I feel that way. Because if under duress you still reach a conclusion that are obvious to people who might have a loftier view of you, to me that's very, very significant. The fact that in the throes of that duress, that controversy, that you're willing to reach a conclusion, as much as it may grate you to do so, you can't even fight the obvious. That makes it even more obvious. That's all I mean. I don't mean rigging endorsement.
Logic there.
Let's celebrate it, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying
there is logic there where the point is the people in the best position to know reluctantly concede he's a Hall of Famer. And then people in less of a good position to know say, since they're reluctant, I'm saying no. That doesn't hold up logically.
Absolutely.
And the numbers put him there.
Absolutely does. Here's the point of view. In the end, I'm not unlike Donovan McNabb. I'm not unlike Bill Parcells. It slides ever so tenuously in T.O.'s direction.
It's not tenuous.
But I'm not ignoring the evidence on the other side. And when you two act like it's so obvious, and you're not alone, that people like Vic Carucci at the Buffalo News or Jason Cole from Bleacher Report are just absolutely absurd for voting against T.O., I'm telling you, I can see their evidence. And I'm telling you, I can hear Bill Parcells' words, and Jason Witten, and Tony Romo, and Jeff Garcia, and Donovan McNabb. And I can tell you this, T.O. will get in, but along the way, it'll be a difficult decision.
Listen, those names that you brought up, I respect both of those contemporaries in this business. I don't mean to cast any aspersions on them. But what I'm saying to you is where their stuff doesn't hold water. A guy like a Lawrence Taylor, obviously, a first ballot Hall of Famer, this is a guy that was hiring prostitutes to go to opponents' rooms. This is a guy that was on drugs. This is a guy that came when he wanted to come to practice and stuff like that. This is a guy that was a distraction in a myriad of ways. I'm saying that as a voter, if you're Bill Parcells or you're Donovan McNabb, it resonates with me because he personally impacted you. As an outsider looking in and going by what we hear, you pick and choose who you gonna let in and who you gonna keep out. I think that's egregious. When the numbers are there to support that he should be a Hall of Famer.
I think guys like Bill Parcells and Donovan McNabb have got it exactly right.
Okay.
We got to agree to disagree on that one.
We definitely disagree with that.
Well, always fun having you. Appreciate your perspective. Coming up, DeMarcus Cousins dropped 40 in last night's win over the Lakers. But do you think you can win a championship with Boogie on your roster?